So, imagine you're reading a Victorian novel or watching a sentimental drama. If we just stop here, what would we expect to happen? Yeah? Probably one of the two possible extremes. Either Vladimir is stranded in the winter forest and perishes in the snow, or he finds his way to church and happily marries Maria. Hello, and welcome back to the Roulette series, where we talk about classic, yet a bit less known Russian literature in English translations. Last time, we started talking about Pushkin's Snowstorm, one of his Belkin tales of 1830, just like the shot, yes, that we also discussed in this series. If you haven't seen my previous episodes, please check them out. Yes, they are on my channel. Last time, we stopped right at the moment when Maria, a girl who is in love with an officer and whose parents do not allow her to get married to this officer because of his poverty. We stopped at the moment when she is ready to elope with him. Yes, so she packs her things, she writes a letter, and she leaves right into the snowstorm. Yes, into the stormy night. So, and then the lens shifts somewhere else, yes, in very cinematographic way. So let's see what happens. We see Vladimir, who spends a day trying to arrange their secret marriage, finding a priest, a church, and securing a couple of witnesses. When finally he sets out to meet Maria, a snowstorm comes upon him and he gets lost in the forest. As Amanda Murphy, one of Pushkin scholars, notes, the heroes in the blizzard are obsessed with their own destinies, but fate interferes in the form of a snowstorm, ruining their seemingly simple plan to elope, which is taken straight from the cliched sentimental plots. So let's see how Pushkin describes this moment. But no sooner had Vladimir left the village and come into the open country that the wind rose, such a snowstorm blew up that he could not see a thing. The road was instantly buried in snow. Everything around disappeared in the thick yellowish haze, through which white flakes of snow were flying. The sky was merged with the earth. Vladimir found himself in the open plain and vainly tried to regain the road. His horse moved at random, now climbing a snowdrift, now sinking into a pit. The sledge constantly turned over. All that Vladimir endeavored to do was not to lose his bearings. But it seemed to him that more than half an hour had passed, and he had not yet reached the Zhadrina copse. Another 10 minutes passed. The copse was not yet in sight. A side note, by the way, I am not an English speaker. English is my second language, but so I didn't know the word copse. But if you also don't know it, it's a little forest. I looked it up. Okay? So let's continue. Vladimir was driving across a plain intersected by deep ravines. The snowstorm did not abate. The sky did not clear. The horse was growing tired, and he was bathed in perspiration, although he constantly sank waist deep in the snow. So, imagine you are reading a Victorian novel or watching a sentimental drama. If we just stop here, what would we expect to happen? Probably one of the two possible extremes. Either Vladimir is stranded in the winter forest and perishes in the snow, or he finds his way to church and happily marries Maria. And Pushkin, of course, tricks us. He tricks our expectations. The snowstorm comes down. Vladimir, after a while, comes across a village that he realizes miles away from the church. Heartbroken, he still manages to arrive, hours after their supposed meeting, only to find that the church was locked. Vladimir paid his guide and drove to the priest's house. His troika, 3 horses, carriage, was not in the courtyard. What news awaited him? What news? Did something happen to Maria? Well, as Pushkin puts it, well, nothing. The expectations set by the first paragraphs of the story are high, probably less for us, the contemporary readers, but more for the 19th century audience. This exposition hints at all possible tropes of a romantic plot. Here is how Bethia and Davidov, two Slavic scholars, describe it. Thus, the blizzard, or the snowstorm, begins by promising all that a novel of sentiment and adventure can give. Young lovers forced to separate at the hands of cruel parents. Their ensuing epistolary romance, punctuated with vows of eternal love and concluded by a secret plan. A farewell letter to the parents followed by elopement, marriage, concealment, and sufferings, and at last the triumphant homecoming and the blessing of the now relenting parents. Vladimir goes into the snowstorm as the intended, or suzhenный in Russian, and he is intended if by nothing more than the sheer weight of literary convention at his back. However, it all goes wrong. Vladimir is prevented from reaching the church by the blizzard. But what about Maria? The plot that involves a young girl leaving the parents would probably lead to a heartbreaking and dramatic scene of a family waking up in the morning and finding that their daughter is gone. Just like in the very famous song by Beatles, She is Leaving Home. I wish I could play it here, but I cannot. However, this is what we get instead. So let's see. The old couple woke up and came into a drawing room. Gavril Gavrilovich in a nightcap and warm jacket, Praskovya Petrovna in a quilted dressing gown. The samovar is a kind of a kettle, yes, was brought in, and Gavril Gavrilovich sent the little servant girl to inquire how Maria Gavrilovna felt and what sort of night she had had. The girl returned saying that the young lady had had a bad night, but was feeling better now and would come to the drawing room directly. Indeed, the door opened, and Maria Gavrilovna came to wish good morning to her father and mother. "How is your headache, Masha?" asked Gavril Gavrilovich. "It's better, Papa," Masha answered. Maria becomes ill after that, and in her feverish delirium talks about her misery, but even her mother, who stays by her side, cannot understand her, and only guesses that her daughter is madly in love with Vladimir. So, what happens next? You will find out next time when we talk about the conclusion of this amazing tale. Meanwhile, please check out Pushkin's text in the video description and do not forget to like this video. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.